Hello and welcome to video 17 in the Different Angle 3D tutorial series for Blender. This is the third video in the plasma table project, and in the previous video we imported some rectangular box section to form the support edge around the top of the table. In this video we'll build on that work by adding an angle iron frame that sits below the table top frame and gives the legs and support for the bottom shelf that will eventually sit above the casters. We'll continue this from where we left off in the second of the plasma table videos, which is video number 16, and we'll build on by creating the angle iron framework that sits below the box section steel that we created in the previous video. And as before, I'll import the angle iron from the asset browser, and if you haven't already made your own asset browser or angle iron, then videos 13 and 14 will show you how to make the angle iron sections with precision, and where you can get the details of the different dimensions of the angle iron to build your own library. So we'll change the timeline again to the asset browser, and I'm looking for angle iron now. At the moment it's still set up for the rectangular box section, so in this I'm just going to delete rectangular in the search box and type in angle for the angle iron, and I'm looking for 50 by 50 by 3, which is this one. And we'll just drag that onto the bottom grid, ready to use. And again, as before, we're done with the asset browser for this video, so I'll just drag the asset browser down and convert it back to the timeline, so it's consistent with the default Blender view that you normally have. So we've now got the angle iron sitting on the grid, which is below the level of the frame, and as it sits vertically, it's useful for the uprights, and the uprights have got square ends. The bottom frame will have to have mitered corners to go around the square of the bottom frame. So I'm going to first of all grab the angle iron and just snap it to one of the legs, in position on the reference frame, so it's in the position of one of the legs. And then in view 1, and you need to, if you're starting afresh with Blender, you need to make sure that the magnet snap is on and it's aligned to edge and snapping with the closest of vertex of the object that you're moving. So we can now grab that on the Z-axis and snap it to the underside of the angle iron. I'm going to leave that where it is for the moment, and then make a copy of that with Shift D and just move it down and snap it onto the bottom, one of the bottom edges. It's on the front edge at the moment, so we can rotate it through 90 degrees so it lies flat on the front edge. So to do that we need to rotate it on the Y-axis 90 degrees. So on the keyboard press R for rotate, Y for the axis, and -90 so it rotates round and sits down where the bottom frame will sit within the reference cube. Now this needs to be mitered on both ends, and at the moment it's a little bit cluttered with all the other objects in the screen, so we can go into a local view for that object by pressing the divide key or / on the numpad. And that takes us, so we get rid of everything out of the view while we're modelling on that one item. And then if you press numpad 7 to go into top view, we can miter now each end of that piece of angle iron. So what I'm going to do to make it easier so you can see all of the edges clearly, I'll press Z for wireframe to go into wireframe view, and then tab to go into edit mode, and just zoom in on one of the edges. And what we need to do is cut a miter at 45 degrees across this edge. Now Blender's knife tool, which we'll use for this process, has improved significantly with Blender 3. It's had a lot of attention, but conversely, if you're used to using the knife as it was, all of the shortcuts that are used with the knife have changed. So I'll start off first of all by pressing K to open the knife tool, and you'll see across the bottom of the screen the list of the different commands that are now used with the knife. Cut through, which used to be Z, is now C, and angle constraint is A. So what I'm going to do is just snap the knife to the bottommost vertex on the right hand edge, and as you go over there you'll see the snap point show as a green square, and it'll stick to the bottom corner until you move the mouse a bit further, and then it just comes along the edge. But you'll see it just in this area close to that vertex it sticks. Left mouse button click and then drag your mouse out, and we can press C for cut through, so it cuts the underlying edges that wouldn't normally be seen by the knife, and then we can press A for constrain. And if you just look in the bottom where it says angle constraint, you can see the angle at the moment is set to 30 degrees by default, and we want it at 45. But to do that, all we have to do is, while the angle constraint is activated, is press 45 on the numpad, and then with the mouse fully over the angle iron, left mouse button click to confirm that cut, and then enter to make the cut. So we've now got a 45 degree cut all the way through the angle iron. So again, go back into top view, and what we need to do now is delete the vertices that aren't on the 45 degree edge. So press Alt A to deselect all, so no vertices are selected, and then we can use either box select or circle select. I'll press C for circle select, and we can carefully just select the edges up the right hand side, but leaving the vertices that are on the very bottom of the angle iron, and press X for delete vertices. So if we roll round, we can see we've now got the 45 degree angle. But if we go back into solid view, so press Z and I'll go into material preview, you can see the ends open. We haven't got a face in there anymore. So what I'm going to do is just hold down the Alt key and then left mouse button click on one of the edges that runs round the open end of the angle iron, and it'll select all of the vertices in that edge loop, and we can simply press face to add a face and close the angle again. So that's all there is to miters. I'll just quickly do the other side exactly the same way. Just scroll across to there, press K for the knife, snap onto that bottom corner, drag the knife across the angle iron, press C for cut through, and then A for angle constraint, and 45 on the keyboard. Left mouse button click, and then enter to confirm it. And again, we need to delete all of the vertices on this left hand edge. We can go into either Z and wireframe to do that, so you can select the underlying vertices as well, or we can use the X-ray, so it sees the underlying vertices. When the X-ray mode is selected, it'll select the underlying vertices as well. And I'll go Alt A to deselect all. This time I'll press box. Just carefully drag a box across all of the vertices down the right hand side, and X to delete the vertices. And again, we've now opened that end up at a 45 degree angle to the back face of the angle iron. So all we need to do is press the Alt key and left mouse buttons select one of the open edges that run around the outside, and to fill that press F for face and the edge will be filled. You can take X-ray off so it doesn't show the underlying edges. Alt A to deselect all, and then tab into object mode, and we've now got a mitered piece of angle iron. And if we go back into the normal view rather than just the local view for this one item, by pressing again the divide key on the numpad, what we can do now is drag that angle iron across to the one of the verticals. So just press grab, and we're doing it on the x-axis, and bring it along and bring your mouse somewhere over the edge to the left. And then what I'll do is tab into edit mode, and we need to select all the vertices on the right hand side. So I'm just, this time I'll press Z for wireframe, C for box select, and just select all the vertices on that side. And again, just with the mouse, we'll press G for grab on the x-axis, so X for the x-axis, and move it across to the edge that you want it to snap to. And we've got the first bottom mitered piece in place, as simple as that. And because we're using a reference frame, it's to the correct length of 1 meter. So tab back into object mode. We can now copy that, and I'll go Shift D to copy it on the y-axis, and just move it towards the center of the reference frame. We can mirror that now on the y-axis by pressing Ctrl M to mirror it, and again press Y for the y-axis and enter, and that gives us the angle iron mirrored in the correct orientation. And then we can snap it onto this bottom edge. So again, we can just press G for grab, Y for the axis we're moving it on, and just bring the cursor across to that bottom edge, and it'll be snapped into position. The next one on the bottom, we need to rotate round and resize again. So while that's still selected, press Shift D to duplicate it, Y to keep it on the Y-axis. If we don't press Y, it's still oriented in the right place, but it will move off the bottom of the reference cube, and it'll have to be repositioned again afterwards. What we can do now is rotate this through 90 degrees. So to do that, press R for rotate, Z for the axis we're rotating it on, and 90. If you was in top view, you wouldn't need to put the axis you're rotating it on, because it automatically assumes you rotate on Z. And then we'll grab this and move it to the closest edge that it's closest to. So press G for grab, Y for the direction of movement, and snap it onto the upright to bring what we're looking at the moment, the right hand edge of that angle, onto the position where the vertical leg is. So it brings it to the correct position in the bottom frame. And then we can grab it on the x-axis and move it so it's over the end edge that lies across the bottom. So press G for grab, X for the axis, and bring it across and snap it onto that edge. And the last thing is to just adjust the size again. So tab into edit mode. The vertices are still selected because of the way it's rotated. So all we need to do now is grab that, take it past the vertical, because the nearest one at the moment is the other side of the mitre rather than the outer edge of the mitre. So we can grab those vertices on the y-axis, Y for the y-axis, and bring it across. It's actually snapped into the right position without going past. So that again gives us the correct size angle iron and mitre for this edge of the bottom frame. So we can tab back into object mode. I'll just press Z and go back into material preview, and we can now mirror that across the bottom and place it on the other edge. So again, Shift D to duplicate it, X to duplicate it across the x-axis, move it a little way towards the middle, and now we'll mirror that object by pressing Ctrl M for mirror, and again X for the axis we're mirroring on, and again we'll just grab it and move it across to the bottom edge. So again, grab on the x-axis and snap it onto that bottom edge, and that gives us a very easy way to make the bottom frame and the components to size without having to consider the dimensions, because we took care of that in the outer reference cube. So the last thing to do now is to just modify this one vertical we first put in place. So select the vertical leg, tab into edit mode, and everything's selected. So what we need to do is press Alt A to deselect all. I'll go back into X-ray mode for this one and box select the bottom vertices, and then in view number 1 we'll just grab them, so press G for grab on the Z axis, Z for the Z axis, and then just bring the mouse down until it's at the top of the angle iron frame that represents the bottom of the plasma table framework, and left mouse button click to accept. And that gives us the correct height for the legs, so we can tab into object mode and copy this across then to the next leg and mirror it as we've done by copying it into the center part of the frame. So Shift D to duplicate it, on the Y axis to move it across part way. Ooh, it's gone all the way. I'll just grab that on the Y axis and move it back a little bit. We can mirror it now with Control M to mirror it, and again on Y for the Y axis to orientate it the correct way around. And then we can grab that on the Y axis, G for grab on the Y axis, and bring it across and snap it to the vertical reference edge. So we've now got 2 of the legs in. If we shift select, so Control Z for that, shift select the other leg, I'd accidentally selected the reference frame. What we can do now is just copy both of those. So Shift D to copy them, X for the axis we're moving the copied items on, and then Control M to mirror them, and again on the X axis, and enter, and then G to grab them again on the X axis and move the mouse over one of the reference edges. And the frame is built as simply as that. We don't have to consider measurements. A quick and simple process, and later on we can dimension the components up if we need to actually get the sizes to make all of these simple fabrication elements. Hopefully you can see just how efficient and fast this process can be to quickly rough out fabrications using standard library parts, and this can be carried over to other sorts of workbenches, tables, racking systems, even conveyors. If you have a library of standard conveyor parts, can be very quickly pulled together, and it can be done in a much shorter time than I used to find having to constrain each component in a 3D parametric solids modeler takes. And you can rough out and prove fabrication assemblies extremely quickly and accurately, just based on setting up a quick reference cage to quickly bring and size the components into. But this finishes the outer frame of the table. In the next video we'll be looking at cutting the slots in the top frame to enable replaceable slats, or slats that you can change when they get too badly burnt, that fit into the top of the plasma table. Again, thanks for watching. Hope you're finding this beneficial, and if you are, please subscribe to the channel or leave any comments that you may want to with the video. It all helps keep me motivated to carry on with further projects and try and help more with more complex techniques. Thanks again, and see you soon.